Time now for Coming In Hot with Brent Wallace, former Ottawa Senator Jason York, and Sean Simpson.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Coming Hot. Brent Wallace, Sean Simpson, Jason York. Gentlemen, welcome. Busy week this week. And today I have the show full of stuff that you guys have never seen because you didn't read the Nerd Report, but things that you are excited about today. We're going to have a new addition to the show. Lots of stuff. It's exciting.
That's good.
Yeah.
Now,
can't wait.
When you keep talking about the Nerd Report, though, where do I find this? I don't. Well,
it's filed. It's filed under N.
Okay, no, but I'm just saying. I'm like, well, am I missing something here, or is this supposed to be sent to me, or what's going on?
Yeah.
So I printed a lovely copy of the Nerd Report for you guys when we were all at the Canadian Tire Center. Yeah. And the pages weren't even moved. Like they were still crisp. So I'm like, there's no point sending this.
And arguably one of our best shows to date. Just totally off the cuff.
Wow.
Lots of stories. Lots of stories.
Technically, he's in control. Wally's in control anyway. So whatever is on the Nerd Report or in the Nerd Report is ultimately going to be the topics that we're discussing. So hey, we're just following your lead.
This is the beauty of the show. Wally thinks he's in control, but he's actually not.
So it's funny you say that. We have a new producer today because TJ's on vacation. He'll be back tomorrow. And I'm trying to go over the show with Patrick. And I was like, well, this should happen after this, but I'm not sure. So just hang on, okay? Yeah. So if anything happens, just letting you know that Pat's back there sweating a little bit, wondering how this show will play out.
Yeah, and Yorkie, you did miss the microphone meltdown as well.
What?
It was not.
What happened?
Wally's mic wasn't working, and man, oh man, he was not an old TJ there. Was not feeling too good. He was really feeling the heat on that one.
Salty.
Yeah.
How long did the mic go down for?
The whole
show.
No,
it didn't work the whole show.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing Wally's not really anal and doesn't worry about the little things.
Yeah, no, it didn't bother me at all.
Just ask his poor son who filmed our nice commercial in the backyard. I've never seen a browbeating like that in my life.
It reminded me of was it Bill
Junior
O'Reilly?
Wally.
Was it Bill O'Reilly that had the meltdown there?
Yeah.
Said, let's just go live.
We'll do it live.
Yeah, it was approaching that, Yorkie, to be honest with you.
I almost didn't have a show.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Where was I Thursday? What was I doing?
You were golfing as usual.
Oh, come on. Got to get content.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we get into the show now? By the way, the Sens rookies
absolutely
wrapping up their weekend at the Prospects Camp, Prospects Challenge in Buffalo. They're in the second intermission right now. We'll keep you updated throughout the show about the third period. But boy, it hasn't looked great, gentlemen. They've been outscored 13-4 if we're discussing defensive gameplay. Well, actually, it'd be 14-4 at this point since it's 1-1 in this game. They didn't have a shot in this first period till about 6 minutes to go, I think. This isn't a great group of
talk about eager beavers. Wally went nuts on the old Twitter machine. He had Wally vision going, breaking down the rookie games. You were there, like I was getting a live feed from rookie camp. I'm like, what the hell is
That's
this?
what I wanted. I'm here for the fans.
Yeah. And if you're going through the list, guys, that's where you have to be honest with yourself. You know, what do you have? And let's be honest, the player pool, and one of the reasons why the Ottawa Senators signed so many guys is to play in Belleville this year. There's just not a lot there. You know, again, the biggest part with Tyler Boucher is just hoping he stays healthy. But outside of Holiday and Tkachuk with a couple of flair, showings. But after that, boy, she gets pretty thin.
Yeah, this was to be expected, fellas. Like years of mismanagement, and giving away a lot of picks, and here you are, and it's just going to take a little time to rebuild the farm. I like a couple of the guys back down there, though, fellas. There's, it's not deep, but there's still a couple of little hidden gems, down there. So it's just going to take time, and let's not forget too, like if you look at Ottawa's core, there's especially down the middle, there's a lot of they're really young down the middle. So there's a lot of guys that are playing up early in their career.
Right.
And when a couple guys hit that early, right? Like Sanderson hits right away. Stutzla hits right away. So
Tkachuk.
a lot of Tkachuk, like a lot of guys that's rare when guys come in that early. And that's kind of been the case here in Ottawa.
Absolutely. And let's not get too excited. Like there might be 2 guys out of that entire group that ever play in the NHL.
Oh,
right. One, there's just no room, and they're just not right. Like the talent level at the NHL level is completely different.
Simmer, you know this. People have no idea how big of a difference it is between, well, number one, between junior hockey and the NHL, but even the AHL and the NHL. Just when you get real NHL guys that skate with AHL guys in the summer, they just think so much faster. They're so much more confident, and it's just you can always tell. And right now, this is the tough part of the year. You got rookie camp, you got main camp. It's scrambly. It's all kinds of. I call it's chaos. And in chaos, there's certain players that thrive in chaos. They love unstructured, and those are when the best athletes, and those guys look like $1 million. And then once the real game starts, you're like, holy shit, maybe that guy's not that good, because then everyone's in their position and real hockey begins. So I actually hate this time of year because too many times people get fooled.
It's 2-1 now, Columbus. They just scored. But I understand your point completely. I will say, though, Stephen Halliday and Carter Yakimchuk are likely the only 2 to play in the NHL. And I thought Stephen Halliday has been their best player.
You've been on it. You've been on him since you took your trip down to Belleville last year. You remember you came back. All you talked about was Halliday. You love this guy.
I like a guy who can play. Yeah, for sure. Like, he's been in whatever environment you've put him in so far, regular season Belleville, playoffs Belleville, now here, he has excelled and been the best player. And he was arguably one of their best players in the playoffs last year in Belleville. He had 9 points in 7 games. So they tell you to make an impression or to stand out, and he stands out.
Do something.
Yeah,
right?
and the other part of that is it's so important to see them with NHL players, whether it's even just practice or inter squad. And then, hey, you don't have to. It used to be training camp was so long that you're like, oh, I want to get everybody a game. Well, for the Ottawa Senators right now, outside of those 2 players, there's probably nobody at the camp right now that's going to get a game. So
let me, those guys, Jorian Donovan. Donovan is someone who will.
For sure. For sure,
He'll get games. He'll get games.
But that's the part where it really clicks for me. It's like when Clevin was called up a couple of years ago, boys. He didn't look out of place at all. I mean, you watch him, you're like, okay, wow, this is a pretty smooth transition when he's coming out of school. And then you say, well, in the American Hockey League, how's he going to fend? This is a nice time to see guys playing against other NHL players, playing in preseason games, and just getting that opportunity.
Fair enough. Let's see what happens. Oh yeah,
No, just looking at the list of Belleville right now. I'm just trying to pull up their team. Yeah, there's going to be some guys that get games. I think there'll be a couple more D that get some games too. Just to see where things at. How many exhibition games? I'm putting you on the spot here, Wally. What are they scheduled to play anyhow?
7
games, right? Yeah. So
the first game I think is on the 22nd.
They play on the 22nd. Yeah.
Yeah. So early on, you're going to see a couple guys get some shots, and then if you have a really good game, then maybe you earn yourself another game. But for the most part, this team is picked, with the exception of maybe one bottom 6 forward position and potentially a sleeper on the jumps out, but maybe the PTO, one of the guys coming on the PTO. But it's the team's pretty well picked.
Yeah.
So just for people listening, and I had a board, but I didn't send it in today. They played the Leafs on the 22nd in Toronto, home to the Leafs on the 24th, then Buffalo on the 24th at home, 26th at home, go to Sudbury for Hockeyville. Then it's Montreal on the road, Detroit on the road, and then back home for Montreal on the 5th of October. Just trying to help. Okay, let's move on. It's Brady's birthday today. Happy birthday to the captain. He's 25 years old. Gentlemen, he is still, based on the roster currently as it is made up, the 6th youngest player still on the roster.
Really?
That's
they got a lot older this summer because with some of the additions.
Right? Like Amadio, obviously Jensen, Perron. They Nick Cousins as well. Like they're an older team, but I went through it and I was like, this is still shocking to me that he is the sixth youngest player.
Yeah, you mix in Ullmark as well, and I mean that's what they wanted. They wanted to bring in veteran players and give a little support to the Tkachuks, to the Norrises, even a Batherson or anybody else, Stützle. I mean, that was the aim. And got to be honest with you, from a media standpoint, I know he's got busy things going on in his personal life with the family expecting. I kind of miss hearing from him, because the part that's certainly been underrated, or not underrated, but that has really stood out since he arrived in town is just what the leadership capability has been. I mean, to me, that's been the impressive part of this guy coming in and basically feeling like a young Mark Messier.
But I don't. So you brought this up on Twitter before, and Simmer. So I don't understand why you say that. It's the off season. He's just been on a couple of shows, ours included.
Yeah,
he's talked enough. I'm not like. What more do we need to hear from him until we get to camp on Wednesday?
Oh, no. I just like hearing from him. It's not, like I said, I don't. It's just when they have a press conference and just the way he's carried himself from the first night we ended up interviewing him for the draft, and all the stuff I hear behind the scenes of texting other players and the support and everything else. No, like I said, there's no fault in it at all. I just really think, hey, there's a real presence there. And you think of the difference between Brady Tkachuk and what was going on with the culture of the hockey club, and had they drafted as Zadina or drafted somebody else, how much different things would feel. That's all. That's not like I say, not being critical. It's just more like, hey, here's where you're bringing basically another Daniel Alfredsson in, and has been a huge part of the culture change and a huge part of some of the recruitment that goes on as well, along with the Claude Giroux of the world.
Absolutely. Well, your board there didn't get enough love earlier. We just flashed that up pretty quickly. The Young Guns board.
Oh yeah, we're getting to it. So I looked up to see players who were 25 or younger and where they were at for most points in Sens history. He sits fifth overall. Jason Spezza, of course, who just seemed to score at will, is number one. There it is. Alexei Yashin was pretty good, right? Marian Hossa, Erik Karlsson at fourth, Brady Tkachuk at fifth, 440 games, 349 points. He's already, by the way, top 9 in Sens scoring in their franchise history. Like I'm not sure where he finishes his career, but it's got to be top 3.
Yeah. That's a great board. That's a great board. That's a great board. Look at the names on there. Spezza.
No, it's
Hossa,
incredible.
Karlsson, Tkachuk, Bonk, and the fact like Tkachuk plays a different game than all those guys. Like, it's more a smash mouth, physical, hard on the forecheck, fights a little bit. Like, that's the great thing about him is he's a unicorn, right? It's very few guys can do what he can do, and he throws up some points.
Yeah, well, and you also go back and look, and you'd have to, I guess, almost go through the old rosters. But certainly when Spezza entered the picture, the talent around him, I would assume, would have been a little bit more mature. So I think it's pretty impressive when you look at a non-playoff team and the points that Tkachuk has put up is, that's well, what more can you ask for? And everyone just keeps looking and saying, okay, this has been awesome. Now get to the playoffs and see what he looks like in the playoffs. I think that's what everyone's just dying for.
Wally, that board makes me laugh. It brought back an old memory with Marian Hossa. When he first came over, his English was so broken, and he ended up playing in a game called the Young Guns game. So we nicknamed him. Yeah. We just called him Young Gun, and we just refer to him as Young Gun. He had that thick ass. He goes, "Oh, I'm Young Gun. I'm Young Gun. I'm Young Gun," and that's all he would say. So to this day, whenever I see him, Wally, I still call him Young Gun. And it's like won 3 Stanley Cups. But man, he was a hell of a guys. For my money, and I know I'm rambling here. Marian Hossa, one of the best two-way players of his generation. It's unbelievable that he was a Senator, and guys like that should finish their career with a team. I know at the time, everyone, it was a great trade for a couple of years, but man, that one leaves a mark. Trade on that guy. Yeah. You always say what if, whatever, but man, what a career he ended up having, the old Young Gun.
Yeah, but I keep throwing this out though. Is Danny Heatley? He was 2-time 50 goal scorer, which is the only 50 goal scorer we've had in Sens franchise history. He saved them $2.5 million on a franchise that pay money,
and
right?
The Heater was a great player too. Like, he could score like nobody's business. Not discrediting Danny Heatley. People forget, like, this guy scored multiple 50-goal seasons with the Ottawa Senators. Was part of the pizza line. Was a great player. Just Haas just continued to get better with age, and obviously he was in great team, great environment. But if you get a redo, I'm not doing that trade. I'm not doing it.
Probably not. But it was the money was the big thing. It was a huge issue.
Yeah, it also, I think, the bad taste of all of a sudden getting a contract done and then flip him out. And I remember just talking to Joe Quenneville all the time and just raving about him. And I actually went over to the World Championships that year. I was in Finland and watched him play, and I really liked him. But we were so focused on drafting a defenseman. We ended up drafting Nick Boynton, I believe, one pick ahead. But that's the part when you look at it and historically you think of. And there was also this feeling in Washington at the time. We had a lot of dealings with Rich Winter. We had Michael Pavanka and Peter Bonder, and there was a little bit of that idea. Well, you got so many European players. And you just look back to it. I mean, God, who wouldn't? Like I say, honestly, one of the, when you talk about Selke trophies and you talk about the centerman winning them, think of as a winger. I mean, God almighty, you'd be hard pressed to find many guys better than him historically in the National Hockey. He just played the game properly, and he was such a horse at the same time.
Yeah, really good person too, fellas. Like one of the best guys. I remember back when I was done playing, he was with Chicago at the time, brought my boys to a game. They were really little at the time. Waited after Hoss came out, spent 20 minutes with the boys, brought the kids a stick. They still have the picture to this day, Jack and Matthew with Hossa, still got the stick down in the basement, but just understand stuff like that, right? Good family. Just good people. But man, I agree. I remember playing against him, guys. One of the toughest guys to play against because he was. People don't understand how big he was. Like all of 6'3", fast, skilled, could do everything. So great player.
And had the dad as a coach, and also had a brother who looked
Marcel,
like him, but just wasn't him. It was interesting because you go to watch him play, you'd be like, okay, he sure looks a lot like him, but not even close to being the same player. I didn't have much of an NHL career with Montreal.
No. Well, that's good story.
That's right in on it.
Nobody loved the hot tub more than Haas too. We called him Hot Tub Haas. Love the good hot tub in the morning.
No, we're done with story time.
Okay.
Let's get on to the nerd report. Let's go.
No, we were still on Brady, which I want to bring up. We have a picture. This is how Brady has aged since he's joined the Ottawa Senators. This is 2018-19 first headshot to last year's headshot.
Yeah,
still looking good. I don't see a ton. I don't think a playoff beard is in order should they end up making the playoffs. So hey, still looking young and very fit and nice and strong. Yeah, that's true. A little bit bigger on the right hand side for sure.
The neck size has changed.
You always get the skinny neck when you're in your teens, and the neck kind of fills out, and then he's the guy's a horse, that's for sure, man. Like when you see him in person, he is a big human being. Like that's the biggest difference I've noticed is just how thick he's gotten. And just like I said, what more, like we talk about him all the time. What more can you say about him? He's big, he's strong, he's physical. The guy wants to win like crazy. He's going to want it even more now because he watched his brother carry around the Stanley Cup all summer. So don't tell me that he is not going to be driven. Like it's going to drive you crazy, Simmer, to be around that all summer. It's trying to drive you nuts.
Well, and watching Dad win one with St. Louis as a management person, then watching Dad driving the golf cart around. Then the other part with Brady Tkachuk, guys, is where would you rank him in toughness in the National Hockey League? I mean, I don't know if it's top 20, top 10. That again, when you talk about the unicorn factor, Yorkie, that's the part. I mean, man, oh man, is this a guy you don't want him fighting all the time because you want him on the ice? But he's right up there with the top heavies in the National Hockey League, which again, that speaks to what a rare breed he is.
Who are the heavies right now, Wally? Who like you got the guy in Toronto?
Do you have Rempe? So Ryan Reeves, Matt Rempe.
Yeah. Oh, the Jack guy in Montreal is going to enter that picture very quickly.
He's in there. He's in there.
But there's not a ton for sure. Like when you go around the league.
Nick Delorier still around?
Yeah,
well,
he's tough.
he ended
He's
up
a tough
taking it
guy.
to he took it to Rempe, and when they ended up fighting, so yeah, absolutely he'd be in it. But yeah, it's just not now. Now we're also then getting into the whole aspect of how do you rank them as players?
Yeah.
You look at like those
Reeves'
guys don't score
situation
40
now.
goals a season or over 30.
No,
Right?
Reeves
No.
is at the point where he can barely put him on the ice. Okay,
Yeah,
Right.
That's the thing. It's like how many guys have this kind of impact and this kind of
None.
toughness? You got to go back to the days of Brendan Shanahan, his
Well,
dad.
Tom
his dad,
Wilson
Keith
was
Tkachuk.
close.
yeah,
Yeah.
great point. Yeah, Tom Wilson for sure.
Yeah,
Legitimate top six forward, played great for Washington in the playoffs there. That is a great comparison. That people kind of laughed at where he was as a player, but yeah,
Tom-
very, very
Tom
effective.
Wilson's
and
a
then,
first round pick.
yeah, no, I know, but it
He's
looked
a very
like a
talented hockey
reach.
player.
It looked like a reach at the time, and then the way he came along, and hey, he played a legitimate top six role for the Washington Capitals when they won the Stanley Cup. Then I just always go back to Brady's dad, and you go back to the Cam Neelys and Kevin Stevens, and
Talkett.
But
Oh yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, for sure, yeah.
Talkett to this day, one of those scariest guys to play against. Like just pure evil. Like just that guy. When he was on the ice, you had to take note. Like he could. Yeah, he's basically. And there was a lot of guys like that back then that could just 200 penalty minutes, could fight, could score, and play mean. It's just it's.
As soon as I hear those stats, well, the stats being thrown out, Yorkie, I think about Owen Nolan. But as far as Rick Tocchet, I think he leads the list. I don't have it in front of me. As far as the Gordie Howe hat tricks,
Did you guys ever hear the story about Owen Nolan fighting the assistant coach in Quebec?
Oh yeah,
Don Jackson. Remember this?
It was
former Ottawa Senator assistant coach.
It was Donnie Jackson, who actually rented my house in Canada Lakes. What a great man, great family, really tough guy when he played. And I believe he was the assistant coach in Quebec at the time. And he came into the room, and I think he told Nolan to get on the bike or do some extra, and Nolan told him to fuck off or something to that account. then Jackson didn't back down. Nolan doubled down. All of a sudden, there's bombs. Assistant coach and Owen Nolan going out of the dressing room. And Nolan was a young guy at the time too. Like you don't see that every day. Number one, a coach and a player fighting, but a young guy. But times were different back then. And imagine that happened.
Well, Quebec was such a gong show at the time, and that was under Pierre Paget,
right.
And they had all these parts and all these pieces, but it wasn't until Pierre Lacroix came in and brought in Mark Crawford along with Jacques Martin and Joe Quenneville. Then they started to put things together, and probably one of the trades that you don't get criticized because the Patrick Waugh trade was so great. They pretty much gave away Sundin to get Wendell Clark. That was not a very good trade for Quebec at the time, and it actually was a great trade by Cliff Fletcher.
Yeah.
Question I have, I think it's happened 13 times. I'm just trying to look it up. That there has been a 40 goal scorer to have 200 penalty minutes in the same season. 3 times, by the way, it's happened by Pat Verbeek. So Rick Tocchet's obviously on the list. Keith Tkachuk's on the list. Do we think that Brady Tkachuk gets 40 goals and 200 PIMs this season?
No, he's not going to get 200 PIMs. You don't. There's more guys around now to do the pugilistic stuff. You don't want Brady sitting in the box for a total of 200 minutes. Like I think 100, low 100 PIMs is fine. I don't even want him there. I kind of like, I don't know if you guys remember Aguinala's PIM totals back in the day. He didn't take a lot of penalties, but you knew he was really tough. And you knew if you kind of screwed around or did something, he might drop the gloves. He had that little bit of an unpredictable factor. And I think Brady's now has the reputation where he doesn't need to be doing that. Like still, run a guy through the boards and maybe take a boarding penalty once in a while, but you don't need to drop the gloves all the time. People don't understand how easy it is to break your hand, because now guys have not only the helmets, but the visor too. Like it's so easy to break your hand. And the last thing you want this guy doing is breaking his knuckles and missing 6 weeks.
Yeah. The only part I look at the lineup, Yorkie, and say to myself, okay, they got a bunch of guys that are going to be stirring it up. They're shift disturbers. So who is going to drop the gloves? That's a part of, I don't mind it. And you can go look at the Florida model, but the last thing you want is somebody else going in and starting the big fire. And then all of a sudden Brady Tkachuk's the one having to drop the gloves. I don't know if McEwen could end up handling that. And, like I said, but yeah, you certainly don't in his case. The last thing you want, but the other one, and this, like I've said this on the show before, reminds me of Scott Stevens in Washington. Basically, I had to tell him not to fight because the other teams knew that the minute it's like Marty McFly, you use the old word chicken or you end up calling the guy out. Next thing you know, there's going to end up being a fight. And that's the tough part for Brady Tkachuk. He's not one of those guys that's going to back down very often, but you certainly, as you said, you don't want to fight him that much. Yeah,
that's the difference with, if you look at the Sens third pairing there, you got Hamonic, you got Clevin. Like Clevin will have to drop the gloves a little bit, being a big guy. And it's, here's the thing too, like the league has changed so much. There's very little fighting. It's made a little bit of a comeback in the last couple of years, but nobody's really afraid of anybody. Like there's no intimidation factor anymore. Like I remember when I was playing, I'll tell you guys a quick story. Quick. We don't need the heading here. I remember one game, and I was playing for Nashville at the time, and I hit Paul Krea pretty good in the corner. And Paul and I had played against each other, and we were friends. So I'd try and hit him. And after I hit him, I skated by Anaheim's bench. Stu Grimson stood up, and he said, "If you fucking touch him again," and Stu was a lawyer, so he had a very big vocabulary. He goes, "If you touch him again, I'm gonna rip your esophagus out." Like that was not I'm going to kill you, you're dead. I'm going to rip your esophagus out. And I'm like, I looked at him, I'm like, okay, that's enough of that.
Yeah. Well, that's when the heavies were so different. I mean, those guys legitimately could hurt you. You know what I mean? Nowadays, if you're at least smart enough and you know what you're doing and you're able to just hold on a little bit, but you're going back to the Twister. My gosh, like in Stu Grimson, I think they were both there at the same time. Yeah, those were guys that flat out, you just Chara. There's all kinds of George Larac, Donald Brashear. It just a whole different world. It was almost like you had to have a heavy to go against their heavy, which nowadays a lot of teams don't even bother with it.
Ottawa had Rob Ray and Matt Cassian and
remember that?
Konopka, Chris Neal, obviously. Brian McGrattan, like it was just a murderer's row of guys that came into Ottawa for that stuff.
When I was just last quick one on the fighting. I remember Krea was getting run around a little bit. Guys were going after him when I was in Anaheim. We brought in, remember the bomber, Ken Baumgartner? The long hair, Jofa. He came in and one guy hit him, and then he just went nuts. For the next 2 weeks, he took notice to the league that he was going to fight at least twice a night, every night. And then all of a sudden, people stopped running Krea because they knew they're going to have to fight Baumgartner. It's pretty easy.
So when Stu Grimson says that to you, did you kind of quickly shuttle back to the bench? Did you pick up your pace at all?
Started looking for quarters.
Okay, Mr. Grimson.
I looked at him, and I knew Stu too, because Stu, when I got traded to Nashville, I had bought a house on Stu Street. I missed him. We became good friends after, and I always bring that story up to him. Like, I'm not a fighter by no means, but that's what those guys did back then. They made sure that your star players didn't get hit. And it didn't even have to be fighting. It was like stand up on the bench and look right at you and point at you and tell you what he's going to do. And then things would settle down in a hurry. And I'm like, come on, Stu. I'm like, I'm buddies with Paul here. It's fine. It's a little thing we got going here. And he's having none of it. So yeah, it worked.
Yeah. No, and what was so different at that time, guys, was the emergence of the European hockey player. And they were not comfortable. And we ended up for a little bit of a stretch. We had Craig Berube, Alan May, John Kordick, Nick Kyprios, and hey, there was no doubt that the Peter Bonders of the world and the Adam Oates, they just loved having those kind of guys in the lineup because that was the only deterrent. And how much abuse the European players took at that time, absolutely, there was a high confidence level when you had a couple of heavies in your lineup.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name off the top. I know someone's going to tell me in the chat right soon. Ottawa had a player who came over from Sweden, and he went to the rookie camp and got hit. And he was like, "That's it. I'm out.
I'm done."
And went back, and he
I remember that. I remember.
I think he called Randy Lee on the way to the airport.
Yes.
And said, I met some guys. And Brian, Michael Wickstrand. Thank you, Jordan Zimmerman.
Yeah, and I think they wanted to get some of his signing bonus back, guys. I mean, and that's not that long ago, Wally. I'd say 10 years ago max. But I just remember him, like you said, just disappearing in the middle of the night. And then there was a big thing about, is the transfer going to work out? Is he going to be allowed to go back? I think he was playing for one of the teams outside of Stockholm. And I think it took a while for the Ottawa Senators to get that sorted out before he was actually able to play back in Sweden again.
Yeah, Michael Wickstrom. Like Brian Murray, that's the famous quote where I don't care where he play, but he can go bag groceries, but he's not playing hockey. Yeah. And he didn't play for, and he ended up playing for Frölunda, but it just always made me laugh. Like he's like, I don't want to get hit. So I'm not doing this anyway.
Yeah,
he can play beer league or bag groceries. Brian Murray. Yes, thanks.
Yorkie and I had the conversation when we were driving around a couple of weeks ago, just talking about the Russian players and how tough the transition was, but the abuse that they took, like from everybody, like you think about going to Europe and you know how hard it is to transition if you're in the KHL, and then you're turning around, your own teammates are treating you like crap. The referees are just looking the other way for you. No wonder the majority of these guys didn't just make a decision and go home. It was absolute abuse.
We had a guy in my second year in the minors. His name was Dmitry Modkov. Every single time this guy came to practice, like the games were easy. It was practice because he had everybody coming after him in practice because he was on a one-way contract. Detroit had brought him in, and everybody was bitter about that because all the guys run two-way. So everybody on the team made this guy's life miserable every day in practice. He got his head shaved. They ran him. They sticked him. He lasted the year, and then he went home, and he was never seen from again. He just never. He's like, I'm not going back to that. But that was the way it was this was 1994, and the Russian players had it really, really tough back in those days, man. Like it was, and it wasn't from the other teams. It was from the minors. Was a jungle. Like to get out of there, you had to survive. Number one, playing in that league because it was tough, but also your own practices. And it went vice versa. You guys remember Bruce Gardner played for
his kid just played for the 67s.
Yeah. So Guards played with me in Ottawa, and then
had a nice set of wheels.
Oh, great wheels. He's a cop now in Barrie. So Guards went over and played in Russia Simmer. And he said the team he was on, you can relate to that because you were over there for a while, they had like 5-6 lines dressed in practice. And some guys are just practice guys. And Gard says guys are sticking him in practice. And he's like, what the hell's going on here? Like, I'm used to the NHL, getting ready. He's getting chopped, cross checks. So he's like, all right. He goes, I guess this is kind of like prison. I'm going to have to fight somebody and show my dominance. So he grabs a guy and just beats the crap out of him. And everyone's, whoa. So he goes, they left him alone after that. Like he had to do that. Otherwise, guys would keep coming from him. It was like, so it went both ways. You go over to a different environment, and it was old Guards had to make a stand, or they would have eat them up over there.
Yeah, well, in the KHL, it was a very dirty league. There was a lot of the teams, and then when you're trying to arrange exhibition games, when I went over there with Minsk, a lot of the teams didn't want to play you because there was such a bad reputation for the knee on knees, and just being a dirty bunch. And a lot of guys didn't want to go into Russia to play any games, but yeah, certainly had that reputation for sure.
I'd be good on this anyhow. We're talking about the Russian league now.
No, I believe we're talking about Brady Tkachuk, to be honest.
Well, it gets boring talking. Like, what else are we gonna say? Great player, he's tough. Like, there's nothing wrong with him.
I got lots. In fact, we got to anyway.
I like the young gun board. I give that. That was good. I like well done.
Okay, thank you. Pat. Pat's probably like, I don't know what we're doing here. We're going to do some ads, and then we got to get to a new segment we've got built for the show. Okay.
All right.
This show proudly presented by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code DAILY365. Must be 19 years of age or older. Please play responsibly. Download the app today.
And this show also brought to you by our good friends at BEI, Bonisher Excavating. If you're looking to spruce up that driveway, get some curb appeal, then BEI is the company you got to choose. They can help you with your driveway paving, aggregate, and topsoil sales as well. Plus, BEI can also do equipment rentals for you. Call them at 613-432-1120 or on the web at bonisherexcavating.com. BEI is helping to shape the Ottawa Valley and slow down in construction zones, boys. It's a lot of construction out there right now, I can tell you. It's everywhere, so be careful.
So before we get to the new Simmer segment, we have an announcement to make. By the way, we also have a contest to announce later in the show for tickets for opening night. We've added a new member to the team. You'll remember the gentleman, Eric, who we golfed with. we all loved it greatly. He is joining the Coming in Hot group as producer Eric. He's going to cut highlights and videos for us. Now, I was excited, and then he sends me his first bit of work. Pat, play the video. No, not that one. No, Pat.
I like that one. That one looked good.
No, Pat, the Wally's World one.
We could have gone anywhere we wanted to this summer, anywhere in the world. But when I asked my kids, when I said, kids, you remember when I said, where would you like to go this summer more than any place in the world, huh? What'd you say?
Why?
Shut up, Russ. Audrey, remember?
Wally World, Dad?
Wally World, Dad. Roy Wally World.
A, we're going to get copyrighted for that, but B, that's what you should expect.
Yeah. And you also, the demographics of that with the wife and the young, teenagers, a boy and a girl, like that is the Wallace household right there. Like that actually just fits perfectly. Good old Russ, right? Rusty.
God love Chevy Chase.
Well, that wasn't you on the first vacation though, when you're cruising in the Corvette there you're in the station wagon, and then Christy Brinkley's driving beside you. Well, he gets the rubber neck on.
Okay. Anyway,
now I'm having flashbacks of Sports Illustrated, the swimsuit. That's where my mind's going.
I forgot to show. He cut a Stephen Halliday goal highlights, and I totally forgot to put them in the show. Anyway, we just want to say welcome into producer Eric. We're excited to have him on board for some fun stuff. Okay.
I'm gonna get on the content. I'm on the ideas committee. I'm going to float the ideas to Eric, and then he'll make me the videos. I mean, this could be great. It's going to be a great relationship. Thanks. This be great, Wally. Great hire.
Okay. Now you got a sneak peek, Pat. I've been trying to keep this under wraps. We have a new segment into the show where Simmer comes up with a daily. He's been doing it on Twitter, but we've now going to integrate it into the show, a poll question. And so, Pat, you can roll the opening now.
Hear ye, hear ye.
What is
nice.
That? Is that the shame bell from Game of Thrones?
That's like Speaker's Corner that used to be on Sparta Street. Hey, you'd end up sitting out there. That's quite the ensemble as well. I might have to get rocking that coat for it, but we'll have a daily little survey and have some fun with it for sure.
I don't know how I got to that point of making that as the intro to a poll question, but it looks pretty good. And
absolutely,
that's me ringing the bell. By the way, I recorded it in my closet.
Nice.
So, Pat, just play it again and appreciate the bell ringing.
Hear ye, hear ye.
I have to admit, when you messaged me to record that, I was kind of trying to figure out what the hell is that going to be about. So that ended up being tastefully done. Nice work.
It might be the best one yet. Okay. So now we can move on to the poll question of the day, brought to you by Sean Simpson. Simmer, I'll let you take it away.
I basically just went simply who's going to end up get the most points for the auto senders this year, and it's Mr. Stützle, Mr. Tkachuk, Mr. Drew, and Mr. Batherson. You know what? I wanted it to be, and this is an interesting thing when you're trying to do these. I'm assuming the majority are going to go with Stützle, but I'll end up having some fun with it, and I'll go with Brady Tkachuk to end up being the most points for the auto senders this season.
Well, let's look back at the last 4 years of the leading scorer. Now, keep in mind, I know Tim Stützle got hurt last season. However, 4 of the last 5 years, one Brady Tkachuk has led the team in scoring. And it's the last time a player not named Tkachuk or Stützle led the team in scoring was Mark Stone.
Really?
So, Yeah. Here's a look at last year's scores. Brady Tkachuk at 74 points. Stützle at 70. Batherson 66. Claude Giroux 64. Does that, by chance, Yorkie, change your mind?
Yeah, the thing I like, I do agree with Simmer there, because the one thing about Brady, he's going to be on every single power play in front of the net, and he's going to get a lot of his points and goals from around there. He's always going to be on at the end of the game. The same with, there just seems to be more options around the perimeter for the Ottawa Senators. Like you can, for example, on the power play, you could have Batherson, you could have Norris, you could have Giroux, you could have Stützle, you could have, there's a lot of, but the only option in front of the net is always Brady. So that to me is, and he's pretty durable too, because you got to take injuries into account. Like he doesn't get hurt that much. So I like that pick, Simmer, but I won't, just to be different. I'm going to go with Tim Stützle. I'll say Tim Stützle thrives under coaching and the new coach, Travis Green. Green brings the best out of Tim Stützle, and he goes on to have a great year, and he stays injury-free and leads the team in scoring.
Simmer, are you taking Stützle or are you going to take Brady?
No, I'm taking Brady Tkachuk. What are you going with?
That's a tough one. If Tim Stützle is healthy and the year goes according to plan, it's him. But boy, it's tough to argue against Brady Tkachuk, who's been consistently doing it. So the poll says 60% to Tim Stützle, 61% now. I will still take Brady Tkachuk.
Yeah. Okay.
And he's buoyed by the new baby that's coming soon. He's going to want to score every goal for him or him or her. And also, by the way, Nick Jensen, congrats to his family. They just had their child as well.
Oh, nice.
And Summer's now upset, Simmer, that you didn't put Josh Norris on the list.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, again, well, first of all, you only have 4 of them. That's usually the way it works on the old Twitter world. So no, he's certainly in the mix with Batherson, with Giroux. That's a good conversation. Just hoping the fella can, but I'm pretty bullish on Giroux being very motivated. Last year of his contract, you end up having Batherson, who I think has been putting in a lot of work, is way ahead of the old ankle injury that we saw a couple of years ago. So I think all those guys, the question is kind of the next layer. And how many points Tarasenko had last year? Is that where Perron ends up doing it? Does Shabbat have a bigger point total this year? So I think there's lots of guys offensively that you could look at from an Ottawa Senators perspective that you think are going to have pretty big years.
Yeah, and for me, I would think they're going to try and go with 3 more balanced lines. Remember, in the years past, under the old coaching, was always load up 2 lines, and we'll figure out what we're doing with the bottom 2 lines. I wouldn't be surprised to see some more depth throughout that lineup, and maybe drop one of those goal scorers there, because they call it the third line, but really the second and third play around equal time. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a more evenly balanced 3-line system that they go with, just to spread things out. And they got some depth. So, and a lot of guys can move up and down now too. Like we talked about this before. You can move a Perron maybe to 2 or 3. You can move a Matteo around. You could move Cousins from 4th to 3rd or whatever, because he can skate. So be a lot more options. Be interesting.
Yeah. And it's also down the middle, quite simply. I mean, philosophically, I kind of get the idea or the thought that it's going to be Stützle, Pinto, Norris, Stützle, Norris, Pinto, however you want to say it. So right there, what you pointed out, Yorkie, that's where you're building around that top 9. Yeah. And they legitimately have that. I'm not, not necessarily defending under DJ Smith, but the other issue they used to have is they only had 6 guys that could play in the top 6. And I still think you could build a top 9. But there was such a drop-off with some of the players that they had brought in from a trade standpoint that I think right now the placement of, and we talked about Jensen on the back end to Ullmark, but as far as a forward group, and it sounds like a healthy Josh Norris, I do like the depth chart the way it's built right now. I feel like there is, as you said, a very capable top 9, and it looks like a 4th line that should have some real purpose to it. So at least on paper right now, I think it's pretty encouraging.
And a lot of times coaches get caught up with always wanting to put your 6 best players together. But the smart guys, they go in duos. They play guys in 2s. And then and I think it works better, because then on that other spot, you put in like a worker bee. Like, remember all those years Crosby had so much success playing? And obviously Sidney Crosby, but his wingers,
Max Talbot.
Dupuis, or he played with what's his name there? He played in Anaheim. He played in Pittsburgh.
The Swede.
Just no, I wasn't a Swede. Just a real grinding type player.
The Canadian that made the Olympic team.
Yeah, I forget.
He was a free agent
Chris
signed with
Kunitz?
Anaheim. Chris Kunitz.
Kunitz.
We don't mention that name on the show.
Okay,
people.
but Dupuis was the biggest one, Yorkie. You point that out.
Yeah.
That was unfortunately the poor hip check from Mark Mathot.
Oh,
and then the
that
old
never get him, eh?
finger slash. But there was a guy that came in and in Minnesota was basically playing for sure in your bottom six.
Yeah.
But they realized, as you just pointed out, like he was a perfect fit and really had some great plays. It was like when Wes Walls came, I think, into Minnesota. You know, certain players being given opportunities and being slid into the right spots. And I totally agree from an Ottawa perspective. That's what you want ultimately. I mean, we see that with Florida, the way these players mix around and the way that they're used. You're not just loading up, on the top, as you said, the top two lines.
But that's
Patrick Hornquist, who I was thinking of.
Hornquist. Yeah. Great nickname too. They always called him
Horny.
The
last guy picked in the draft, by the way.
He's such a good guy, by the way.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's the same year as Sid, and so they played together, but they were also the first and last pick of the draft or whatever.
Wow, that's amazing.
Horny. But that's what, like, I could tell you as a defenseman, it's guys that can skate and defensemen that are not that physical, but a lot of today's defensemen, they move the puck. They hate it when they have to play against a guy like Cousins, or they have to play against a guy like Brady Tkachuk or a Tom Wilson. You hate it because you know that guy is going to come hit you all the time. Versus when I see a line come up, and I'll throw a line comes in with like DeBrincat on it, a couple other skilled guys, like, all right, no, I'm not getting hit this shift, and I'm going to have a little bit more time to move the puck. That's why I love it, putting, like, let's say you got Brady, you got Timmy, and then you elevate, Cousins, get out there for a shift on right wing, because that guy is going to go a million miles an hour. He's going to hit everything in sight, and he's going to make the line tougher to play against. But that's what good coaches do. They identify that during the game, who's going, who's not going, and they're not afraid to elevate or de-elevate guys during games, and that's how you win.
Yeah, and what really stood out, and you saw this all the time, going all the way back to the New Jersey Devils building the third line that had Holik and McKay and Peluso. But a few years ago, when St. Louis won the Stanley Cup, that line of, I think, Barbashev along with Steen and Sundqvist was absolutely incredible. And the smaller D, like Krug or guys from Boston, every shift that they were out there, they knew they were going to get whacked. And that to me really set a tempo and a tone. And I think was one of the big reasons why they ended up winning that 7th game in Boston.
I'm just 100%. Watching. So the chat, when I said we don't mention Chris Kunitz's name, people are now mentioning all the players that have done wrong to the Ottawa Senators. Matt Cook, Jason Pominville, Sean. Like, it's just, everybody needs to stop. It's bothering me.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, Kunis was just a great story, though, as a free agent player. I mean, even Dustin Penner, Anaheim had a few of those guys where there had been so many college players signed that never turned out to be anything. But he legitimately had a hell of a career for himself. And like I said, I believe played in the Olympics in Sochi.
When the games get tougher and you get to the tough part of the season, if you're lucky enough to get in the playoffs, it's those types of players you win with. Like it gets tougher for the skill guys, and then that's why you see look at the teams that are winning lately. Vegas, Florida, they're filled with those guys, and that's what Ottawa's tried to do this summer. Identify, get some of those guys, make yourself tougher to play against.
Okay, we have a contest to announce. So the Sens will begin their season on Thanksgiving weekend, if you will, playing Florida. We're going to give you 2 tickets to opening night. It's 100 level. It's not far from the Sens bench. I think it's the section over. All you have to do, since it's Thanksgiving, the point is we'd like to help the area food banks. I don't care which food bank it is. We would just like you to make a small donation, and we'll enter you into a draw for the 2 tickets to opening night. Fair enough? Like $5. And you just have to email the show, cominginhotsens@gmail.com. Your receipt, you can blank out any information you need to. I just want to see that you've donated, and we'll get you into a draw. Fair?
That's awesome. Perfecto.
So it'll be good. So all of you enjoy. We'd love to send you to the game. So I think it'll be a great game to begin with, and we'll look to do more of that throughout the year. So that's our little contest for this next few weeks. October the 8th, we'll make the draw. Someone's asking in the chat, how do you make a donation? Just, you can find your local area food banks and make a donation online. That's all. Okay. All right.
Perfect.
Gentlemen, we have a guest tomorrow on our show. You've mentioned his name a few times in the show. We haven't had him on yet. He's a Stanley Cup champion. Nick Cousins will join us tomorrow.
Sweet.
Nice. So you'll have to.
I didn't even know we had him. That's a surprise to me.
You'll have to curtail story time tomorrow.
And you're the ideas guy.
I'm the idea.
You should be referenced on anything that happens with the show, especially on the guests. Ideas guy. Right?
God, this is what I see. Pat's just shaking his head too. I'm sure he is. Like, how does Wally put up with this? I'm sure.
Do you guys remember? It's totally off topic. Speaking of ideas, one of the best Saturday Night Live skits of all time. Bad Idea Jeans. I don't know if you guys remember that. Bad Idea Jeans. Just no. Wally,
I don't know. Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Listeners, go on your Google machine and go Saturday Night Live Bad Idea Jeans, and you will laugh your head off for about 20 minutes. Trust me on this one.
Okay. All right. Good.
I'm okay. So we have 4 shows this week. Sens will open camp Wednesday with medicals, Thursday on ice. We're going to try and bring you all 4 shows this week, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Yorkie, by the way, has booked some tea time, so he will miss a couple of shows, but we will still be here. So
yeah. I'm good. I'll be here Wednesday.
Oh, well, last I chatted, you weren't. Well, this is good. So we just missed you on Thursday.
Just Thursday.
Okay. Well, I'll get you Eric's number. You can get him a chat for your ideas committee, and we'll see. Oh, someone's asked about the bird report. Before we go, gentlemen, no birds. I have a squirrel that just sits on the bird feeder. No, chipmunk. I'm sorry, because the squirrels are too heavy, and then just knocks all the seed out to the ground.
Man,
the squirrel and the bunny shows up. There's been no birds ever since I had that one shot of everybody and their dog showing up from the bird family. That's it. Nothing.
Yeah. Wow.
I want to give it away. I'm tired of this thing now.
Well, we're gonna have to get you down to the birds place on Bank Street and figure this out.
You must have the wrong. Must be the wrong.
I was.
You must have the wrong seed.
Yeah, you got this beautiful backyard. I mean, it just that should be bird utopia. Right? I find that a little bit hard to believe.
Nothing. Nothing.
Wow.
Wow. Like, I have tried just to look and watch. Nothing. All I see is this stupid chipmunk show up he lays across it. I will send you the picture. Just chills.
Post it.
That's awesome.
Send it out to Eric. He'll make a nice little meme for you.
Yeah, have something there for sure. Hey.
All right. See you all tomorrow, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Take care, and thanks to Pat for
see you guys. Thanks, Pat.
Have a great.
Thanks for tuning in to Coming In Hot. If you enjoyed the show, hit that like button and be sure to subscribe to never miss an episode.